Welcome into another edition of New Track Record Podcast. Caleb Hatch, Justin Kinney with you, and we are joined by a special guest this week, Adam Stern, motorsports reporter for Sports Business Journal, SBJ.com, with us to discuss all things IndyCar, a lot of IndyCar in the news in the last week or so. Wanted to catch up with Adam. First off, Adam, thanks for coming on.
Anytime. Thank you.
Always great to have you. Let's go back to last week and the announcement that Fox and Fox Sports buying a 33% stake in Penske Entertainment, including the NCT IndyCar Series and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This seemed to be way off the radar for us and pretty much any fan. Was there any inkling of this coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, great question. I would say largely no, but I think a couple things to note. I mean, one, of course, we know that IndyCar from a broader perspective has been under pressure in recent years to respond to having, increasingly well-capitalized, aggressive rivals who are, making all sorts of moves all over the U.S. with new races. Obviously Formula One has had a big rise since 2020. NASCAR, has huge TV revenue and is using that to, kind of reinvent itself. And there's other things going on as well. And there's other things outside of, motorsports that are, capturing people's attention and taking people's time up and stuff. And so IndyCar has been in this position where, yes, it still has the Indy 500, but we know that there's been a need for a while to improve the series overall. And so that's kind of the broader context that makes it not a complete total shock. But with that being said, this was largely off the radar. I will say, it was known, I believe, that there were some members of the Murdoch family that they're at the Indy 500, but that's not, necessarily surprising. They've gone to many Daytona 500s and they don't own any of NASCAR. And so I think, look, this was definitely off the radar. We know Roger Penske and his team do a great job of, having a very small circle. And when you have a very small circle and you don't have to involve a lot of people in deals and you keep a secret pretty close, that is your chance of maybe it not leaking. So for example, let's say they had told the teams that this was working, this was in the works. The chances of it not leaking, even if they told the teams do not leak this, would have probably been pretty small. But if you don't tell the teams, if you don't tell almost any of your employees, all these things, basically the same way that Roger Penske pulled off the huge surprise that he was buying it from the Holman George family in late 2019. If you go back to that, I think there was almost stories coming out of that shocker, which was probably even a little bit bigger than this one, although this was a huge shocker too. I think there were stories coming out of that with, the likes of Mark Miles and others saying like, yeah, there was only like 15 people on earth who knew about this deal. And, a lot of those are like lawyers and people who would never talk to the press or, things like that. So, Roger Penske and his team do a great job of keeping a small circle, and they were able to do that here. I'm sure they probably impressed upon Eric Shanks and his team at Fox that hey, keep this to a very small circle on your side as well. And they were able to pull off a huge surprise. But, there was, of course, we know if you go back and look and, the likes of Nathan Brown, I believe, from the Indy Star, amongst others, have shared over the last week some clips that I believe like he had even produced amongst others about, Michael Andretti saying a year ago, hey, Roger, if you're not going to invest in this thing, you need to sell or you need to sell a stake. And, Zach Brown, even just a couple weeks ago, before this announcement, saying to the likes of the Indy Star, I think amongst a couple other small outlets, a small selective other outlets, saying that, IndyCar needs to go on offense. And so that is kind of the broader context where this makes some sense. And we know that, of course, people are pouring money into sports. We know that Fox Sports owns, a stake in the spring football league that they're invested with. We know that they feel like this is probably a relative bargain to the 20 to 30 billion they'd have to spend to buy Formula One. And they feel like Fox can maybe make this their chance to make this America's version of Formula One, which it essentially is. And they got it for 125 to 135, just for that third. So there's some broader context that makes sense, but overall they pulled off a huge shock.
Adam, since this came out, I mean, you and media have done a great job with the details of this deal. But we still all kind of wonder, what does this mean? What is this gonna mean? Details, and is it really difficult to really kind of zero in on those things, or do you have some ideas to say, hey, in 3 years, Fox's impact on IndyCar is going to be A, B, C?
Well, look, I mean, I think it's a great question, and I'd say I'm still trying to land some interviews with the principal players here, so obviously as the principal players start talking more, we'll get more concrete details. But what we can say generally, and that we know of, and on top of what they have kind of said in their limited remarks, is that, of course, they, Eric Shanks has indicated that they want to kind of help create new race events. They want to eventize races. They want to make sure, events races are more than just kind of, you going there. And I think it was even hit on this week in the Racer mailbag, Racer magazine about, when you go to like a Long Beach, it's an event, but when you go and there's racing all day long, all sorts of different series. And sometimes when you go to an IndyCar race at an oval, it's just IndyCar and Indy Next, and there's not a lot of action. And so I think one thing we know, just generally speaking, is that when a company buys into another company, they get to start influencing it. They sit in on the meetings. They're on the board of directors. They get to try and put their impact and imprint on that company that they just invested in. So, you look at a company like Fox Sports, and you look at Fox Corporation, what are they? They're a giant media corporation. And so just look, we know in, late 2016, there was a deal that was struck. It was closed in 2017. Just before I hopped on this call with you guys, I was listening to the Liberty Media earnings call about Formula One. And in late 2016, they bought Formula One, and look at what happened. They started just trying to put their impact and imprint on the company, and they said, hey, it doesn't look like we've been really doing any sort of behind the scenes show. And so why don't we just try that? And anyone got an idea for a name? Drive to Survive? Oh, okay, great. And then maybe there'll be a global pandemic and everyone will be stuck at home and they'll have no choice but to watch us and our sport will change forever. And so they couldn't have known in advance that things like that were going to necessarily happen, but they knew that there was some low-hanging fruit of things that they could try and that, the sport was. So you look at Eric Shanks' comments, he said there's year-round storytelling potential. Like, that's a great indication of he thinks there's more content opportunities, to use that buzzword. There's more programming opportunities around this sport that haven't been unleashed yet. So we don't know exactly what yet, but we can obviously expect them to try and help use their influence to create new events and use their influence to create new media opportunities and promote the sport better, I would say. And so we'll have to wait and see for some more specifics, but that's what we can expect them to do.
Adam, something we brought up last week in the podcast was not only Fox being interested in investing, but also that money that Penske Group Entertainment has gotten for the sale, $125 to $135 million estimated. Could that money be reinvested into the series somehow?
Yeah, that's a little interesting. Here's the thing about it is, of course, they got that money, but they also gave up the equity, right? So it's not like just pure profit necessarily, because they're giving up some of their value of what they were holding. So that being said, of course, I'm sure from their perspective, they hopefully got a nice premium. We know that the numbers seem to roughly match up with what we were hearing around the time that he bought, IMS and IndyCar from the Holman George family. It looks like maybe he got a slight premium, which is what you would expect. If someone like Fox comes to you and says, we want to invest, you're not going to sell it for, under market value. You're probably going to ask for a little over market value and get that. So, it's certainly possible this is going to help, Penske Entertainment invest a little bit more for sure. But I think one thing you also have to look at is this just also helps them take some of the burden away. This is one of the blessing and the curse of, taking over IndyCar is you get to run IndyCar, but if people are also looking at, hey, IndyCar's struggling a little bit, all of a sudden it's not as good to be running IndyCar, right? So now all of a sudden they have two companies that are running IndyCar, and one is a giant media corporation, and the other, of course, is Penske Corp, which we know all the great things that they've done over the decades, including, of course, build racetracks and run events. They know how to do that, but they're just, they're not the same thing as a huge, Hollywood agency like TKO Group, which owns WWE and UFC, or, Liberty Media, which owns the Atlanta Braves and F1 and now MotoGP and all these different things. So, I think there's a chance that this can help them, Penske Entertainment, invest more, but I think also it's just, having someone, now has a stake, another seat at the table in terms of who helps invest in this. And, for Fox, this is kind of like a drop in the bucket. I mean, if you look, I think they make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars annually just off of, NFL ads alone. I mean, like, this company makes billions and billions of dollars a year. So for them, this is kind of an opportunity to help invest in IndyCar, I think, on their end. And if the series grows dramatically in value, it's a very smart bet. But if it doesn't, it's not like they risked the bank on this. I mean, if you looked at their stock the next day, I think it was up, as after the close of that day of trading, after they announced it, I think the stock was up, 0.5%. So it was up, but it was up very slightly. I mean, it wasn't like there was no huge reaction from Wall Street either way about this deal, because it's not like they risked a huge amount of money on it. So it kind of is a smart bet from that perspective, because now they'll be able to try and grow IndyCar into what they hope will be, the next America version of Formula One, in terms of being much more popular. But at the same time, it's not like they risked a lot of money. But I do expect this to ultimately result in more money being invested in IndyCar. And so whether it's coming from Penske Entertainment or Fox or a combination, the sport's going to have more money probably pouring into it now. And you need that. I mean, that's what you need to try and compete against NASCAR and F1.
Adam, you mentioned year-round content opportunities. Would that potentially include expanding the schedule, whether on the front end or back end, or is it maybe more working the Hollywood aspect that you mentioned?
I think it's both. I think it could be both. I mean, I think there's definitely some – we kind of go back – I forget exactly what year it was, but, like, there's that Boston Consulting Group study all those years back in the early 2010s, I think it was, that said – amongst other things, you need to end your schedule before football starts. And, of course, we know that NASCAR and F1 don't do that. And, definitely they see reduced ratings, but they still have that hardcore fan that tunes in, and it helps them have that more year-round presence. And so, look, I mean, there definitely is some logic to not going against football. I mean, that's absolutely clear and real. But at the same time, I do think, here's an example. So Fox, of course, is not only a huge network and media company, but they're a huge network and media company that has NFL media rights. So is there a way where they could now schedule IndyCar to happen right after a huge NFL game? I mean, if you guys have seen earlier this year, Formula E, the all-electric racing series, has been touting this huge rating they got from the Mexico race in January. And the thing they left out is that it happened right after 35 million people tuned into a NFL wildcard playoff game, an AFC wildcard game. So, scheduling things like that matter. And, this could help IndyCar, where they could say, hey, now if we can run right after NFL games, we don't have to worry as much about not running during NFL season, because now we could get a legit rating during it. So, yeah, I do think this could help expand the schedule potentially. But, yeah, it'll definitely help with content, too.
Something, Adam, that we've continued to wait for an answer, yay or nay, is from Honda and their future in IndyCar. The package has been set, the future engine package. We've seen enough of the ratings to maybe if Honda was waiting for that. They've dominated the season with Alex Palou and won the Indy 500. What is Honda waiting for to say yay or nay to IndyCar going into the future?
Well, great question. I mean, I think obviously there was a little bit of paddock logic, which, from people I've spoken to is kind of the legit logic to have at this point, that new kind of the new specs that came out around the new car suggested that they might have been able to work things out with Honda. And so we'll see if that's the case. And that would obviously hopefully be huge. I mean, it would have been devastating to lose Honda. It's possible maybe Honda's already given them the kind of indication that they're likely to stay. But I've always heard that Honda, likes to be very deliberate. They like to take their time, process all the information, and wait till the, kind of almost bitter end to make their decision. So maybe they haven't, I mean, they obviously with the deal going through 2026, you could see maybe, them having maybe towards close to the end of a little bit later this year to make the decision. I wouldn't be surprised if they've already indicated one way or the other and just hasn't really leaked to us yet. But, hopefully based off of those specs and then, of course, this investment from Fox, there's a thought that they could potentially stay in IndyCar, because at one point it was looking quite bleak, at least based off of, what we were hearing and what other people had been reporting. There's still a thought in the NASCAR garage that they're likely to come to NASCAR, but it looks like possibly that could be part of NASCAR changing up kind of their own formula, whereby they would start allowing engine manufacturers to almost have a little bit more of an IMSA-like system with BOP, and so they could use some more of engines that they use in their street cars more more than they do at this point. So we'll see. Maybe they could pull off NASCAR and IndyCar. That would be obviously spectacular if they didn't have to leave IndyCar, and obviously from NASCAR's perspective, it'd be great if they could come to NASCAR. But you'd hate to see them leave IndyCar. I mean, it would just be awful. So to be down to one OEM without at least one replacing them, and we haven't really heard of one in the offing at this point in terms of a new one. So of course they were close with Toyota at one point, but that didn't ultimately happen. So yeah. We'll have to see when that gets announced, but it does seem like there's been some positive indications of late, which a couple months ago, it seemed like that wasn't going to happen. So it's been good to see. And, nonetheless, you can't count your chickens before they hatch. So we'll have to see if ultimately they're able to save this deal with Honda, but there have been some positive indications of late.
IndyCar has a new race next season in Arlington. Tickets actually just went on sale for that. They're working on a race in Mexico City. We've heard rumors of a Denver street race coming as soon as 2027. With this Fox deal, would we expect more Fox influence on what markets and what kind of races IndyCar will be going to in the future?
I would think so. I mean, again, like it just goes back to them now having a seat at the table. I mean, they're going to presumably, I don't know exactly how IndyCar's, board meets and whatnot in terms of Penske Entertainment, but there's got to be kind of some top level meetings, and Fox will now be at those. So I would imagine they'll definitely be able to have an influence in that. And of course, there's been rumors and rumblings about Denver possibly for 2027. Doesn't seem like it's likely for 2026 at this point. But yeah, I mean, if that's another event that happens around an NFL stadium, granted, the Broncos are an AFC team, so I guess I don't know. I don't know if that complicates things with Fox usually being the NFC network for the NFL, but in some shape or form, yes. I mean, I definitely think that Fox will have an influence there, and again, just like the scheduling opportunities they'll be able to offer from that will be huge. It was interesting to see reported earlier this week from Black Book Motorsport, a publication I believe in the UK that covers racing, that they were hearing that the deal between Fox and IndyCar in terms of media rights is now guaranteed through 2030. I mean, obviously you would think that, in some ways it'll be almost in perpetuity now as long as they're through them. But I mean, that's still, to hear the actual number of what's guaranteed at this point, that does kind of put it in perspective. I mean, Fox and IndyCar are now tied at the hip through the end of this decade, and really into the start of the next decade. So by all those notions, I would expect Fox to have a significant influence on where IndyCar goes in the future.
Adam, when you look at, we've been spoiled this year with IndyCar in the sense that we haven't had to have any streaming service to watch any session for IndyCar or Indy Next for that matter. The announcement that Fox One is coming later this year, do you expect some of IndyCar and Indy Next content to move, whether it's even practice sessions or qualifying, to Fox One? Could we also see it streamed on Fox One, but also remaining on FS1, FS2? Any indications in the future of what, if anything, could be moved off over-the-air TV and put on Fox One?
I haven't heard yet. I mean, I certainly expect IndyCar to be part of that mix, but I don't expect them to structure anything it'd be especially for Fox. I mean, Fox is a company that, yes, they're now finally kind of launching a streaming service. They're kind of almost the last to the party in some ways. And it's not like by mistake they let all these other companies lose billions of dollars on streaming, and then they figured out how to do it kind of more cheaply all these years later, let other companies develop the technology for them. So it was actually somewhat of a smart play by Fox. But, now that Fox is finally kind of launching this service, I would imagine they're probably not going to structure in a way where they're going to try and turn off fans too much. So you never know for sure. We'll have to see. Sometimes there are those paywalls or even double paywalls that have been constructed. I mean, like, for example, if you look at UFC fans in recent years, they had to have ESPN Plus as if they wanted to watch all the action. But then if they wanted to watch the pay-per-views, which happen once a month, they had to have ESPN Plus and buy the pay-per-view. So there can be paywalls. There can be double paywalls that happen with these streaming services. I don't want to speak out of school or speak too soon. But I certainly, I'd be surprised, particularly with IndyCar again, because the thing about IndyCar is it's not a huge investment for Fox. And so the less that they have to invest and pay for the rights, the easier it makes them, more flexibility it gives them. And so from that perspective, I think they're going to try and maximize exposure and maximize viewership for IndyCar. They're not going to be as focused on, hey, looking at their pro forma sheets about we have to charge this much so we can get this return. I mean, they can almost get their return on IndyCar from Indy 500 advertising alone, almost. And so I think from that regard, I would expect IndyCar fans to continue to be able to have a lot of opportunities to watch IndyCar, whether they have linear TV cable subscriptions or if they just want to go for this streaming product. I think this is more Fox's attempt to get, those cord cutters and cord nevers, and people who don't have cable and get them in their mix more than it's trying to really try and add paywalls onto fans like IndyCar. So we'll have to see exactly what happens, but I don't think this will make it tougher for IndyCar fans necessarily to watch. And yeah, I mean, I certainly think there's content opportunities possibly that they could add, they could put on with these streaming services when you talk about IndyCar, whether that's, documentaries, docuseries, and obviously, like to your point as well about Indy Next, great, but at the same time, they've had Indy Next races on FS1. I mean, that's been fantastic for the series. So it'd be a bit of a shame to see that stop and see that, suddenly go all the way to streaming, but we'll have to see what they announce. But yeah, one way or the other, I think IndyCar is cheap enough of an investment for Fox where they're going to continue to try and make this as easy as possible for fans to watch.
Adam, you look at what IndyCar and Fox, the 33% stake, ESPN acquiring NFL Network and NFL Red Zone, NFL getting a 10% stake and ESPN in return. Is this the future and we're shifting away from just straight up media rights deals between leagues and broadcast networks and instead it's about ownership and equity moving forward?
It's hard to say just because I think it clearly is a trend, but it's hard to say exactly if everyone's going to end up in this direction or not. And we'll also have to see how it goes with, for example, NFL and ESPN. There's potential pitfalls. Look, I mean, there could be potential pitfalls you could point out of Fox and IndyCar. I mean, if you want to theoretically look at some of the same things people are concerned about with the ESPN NFL deal, people are, saying, hey, there's going to be a loss of independent kind of journalism from ESPN about NFL, all these different things. So there could be potential pitfalls, and we'll have to see. It could be that not every league goes down this route, but clearly media companies are extremely well capitalized. They have, billions and billions of dollars of annual recurring revenue. And, their models are at the same time somewhat changing. So it's causing them to look to have new strategies and be bold. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see this. But, again, like you look at NASCAR. I mean, what's NASCAR going to do? Who knows? Could they sell a stake to a company like a TKO Group or a Liberty Media, or a network like Amazon Prime Video or, who knows, right? It's all possible. Or they could choose not to. I mean, they could say, hey, we don't want to do that for 50 years to come. And all of a sudden, there's no deals like that to work on for the next 50 years. So it really is somewhat on a case-by-case basis. But that being said, it does appear to be somewhat of a trend for sure. And again, you look at Fox, this is not their first time they've done this. They own a stake in the I believe it's called the UFL, that spring football league. So, they kind of do see this as a little bit of a blueprint and formula for them to follow. But at the same time, they've done it on some leagues that have been, from their perspective, a nice bargain. And it's, they're not breaking the bank to do it. So I think there is somewhat of a blueprint here, but I don't know if every league is going to do it. And if they do, some of them may not do it for quite a while.
Adam, we're 3 races from the end of the IndyCar season. So almost a full season in with Fox. And even before the announcement of the buying of 1/3 of the series in IMS, we had questions in terms of the ratings and the impact and the interest from people that you've spoken to throughout this season, from, the start of the season with the high number at St. Pete to the great number from the 500. what has been the overall response to year one with Fox as a broadcast partner? Have you heard more interest? Is it, people expecting better numbers, worse numbers? What is kind of the feedback that you have heard over the course of this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, it's been a good start. You can't necessarily, Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. So, I mean, I think to have expected Fox to be able to come in and just the series just, instantly take off and grow 2 times in ratings to 3 times or 4 times for every race would have been probably unrealistic. That being said, given how well they promoted IndyCar over the offseason, there might have been some of those, perhaps in retrospect, unrealistic expectations. And so as a result, I think it's been a good season. Of course, whether it's been great is probably more where it's up for a debate. It was obviously a great Indy 500 rating. I think it was a good to great start at St. Pete. And then there's been some other, good results sprinkled in there, but there's clearly been some races that have been less than amazing, less than stellar, even perhaps into bad territory, or just not great territory when you talk about the viewership. I mean, several races underneath 1 million. I believe a lot of races even underneath 800,000. Certainly at least a handful. So there has been some pockets of weakness that show there's still a lot of work to do. And, it shows that when Fox promotes the heck out of the series, there can be a good result. When you look at Indy 500, I mean, yes, it wasn't only just the Fox promotion. You also did have, for example, Kyle Larson in there that helped bring the NASCAR fan base. And so there were some factors at play beyond just Fox, but there's no doubt that Fox had, really good promotion. And of course, in the offseason, heading into the season, they had really good promotion. So I think it's clear that when they promote, the series a lot, there can be good results, but they can only do so much. And that's why I think they wanted, I think that's a big takeaway is, let's say Roger Penske had said, hey, no, we're not going to sell you this stake. That could have carried some risks with it. Because then if they said no, it might have been a little bit more where Fox was looking at some of these ratings right now and being like, ooh, like they won't let us buy a stake and we're not super impressed by every single race. But now they can more so look at it and be like, okay, well, we're building something here. So I think overall, I think there are some people in the paddock who maybe wished the viewership for some of the races were a little bit higher. I would not be surprised if there were people at Fox and even at IndyCar who wish some of the viewership were a little bit higher for some of the races, but it's been a good enough start. I think certainly when you have your biggest event of the year do really, really well, you're going to have at least an okay year, if not good year, no matter what. And so I think it's been a pretty good year, but yeah, there's no doubt that not every race has been a barn burner, in terms of the results. And then, of course, we even know, there's been 1 or 2, issues in terms of attendance. I mean, namely really just Iowa. I think the rest of the year attendance-wise has been really, really good, it seems like. It's been a strong summer at a lot of events from an attendance perspective, but just whatever went wrong at Iowa was it went way wrong. So that's been, I think, the one disappointment.
Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal. Adam, thanks so much for taking the time, and I'm sure we'll check back in with you when other IndyCar business news comes about. Appreciate it, Adam.
Thank you.
Always appreciate Adam coming on the podcast, and something you pointed out that I noticed as well, he sounds pretty confident about Honda coming back.
I don't want to say that Adam knows but can't say anything, and maybe it's just me wanting to hear that news. But yeah, it just seemed like Adam maybe knew more than he can let on, hopefully.
Or that just the vibes are positive.
Which they are. I mean, when we heard the engine spec, and Adam said the same thing, like it's basically what Honda wanted.
And it's what it was supposed to be before.
Correct. And you felt like, okay, well, we have that news. Honda's now going to say they're in because they got what they wanted. And still we wait. So, maybe he's just in the same situation we are, and we've seen positive indications compared to even 3-4 months ago. But it also just felt like Adam's in the know. He knows more than we do. But you can't maybe talk about it yet. So hopefully that was Adam dancing around something he already knows. But yeah, anytime now, Honda, if you want to make that public, we'd all feel a heck of a lot better.
Yes, especially if it's return and not
Yes, well,
not
yeah,
leaving.
we just want to, don't say anything if you're leaving, but returning, let's just get this news out here so we can quit worrying about beyond 2026 right now. Because, with the Fox news, you want to feel really good, but it's being an IndyCar fan, right? No matter what positivity there is, there always something on the horizon or some concerns that are like overarching the entire series. And right now, that's Honda's future.
Well, and let's hope we're not talking about Portland attendance as we shift to this weekend. We have an actual race to talk about after an off week, but plenty to dive in with Adam, obviously. So let's get into talking about the race at Portland coming up this Sunday afternoon. Taking a look at the schedule for the BitNile.com Grand Prix of Portland. BitNile still involved in the sport, still the title sponsor.
Yep.
Schedule Friday, as we're recording this Thursday morning. Friday, 5:30 Eastern, FS2. Obviously, IndyCar Radio, IndyCar Live, Sirius XM as well. But practice 1, FS2, 5:30 Eastern. On Saturday, noon Eastern for practice 2 on FS1. 2:30 Eastern on FS1 for qualifying. Final practice, 7:30 Eastern on FS1. And then coverage Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Taking a look at the green flag time, and it is 3:22 Eastern, 12:22 Pacific.
All right, a 22-minute pre-race.
About standard for what they've done, which to me, that's about the right amount.
That's a good, 15.
I don't need 45 minutes. I don't
Correct.
need an hour. I don't even need a half hour. I mean, by the time the green flag flies, you're really shifting to pace laps, about 5 minutes before. So that's probably about the right amount of time.
I mean, I think if they were doing routine, regular features, which maybe that's something we can hope to see in the coming years with Fox. I mean, that plus teasing the race and interviews and stuff, I could see a half hour for that. But when you don't have those long form feature stories,
and they're doing a feature with the driver every race, I've noticed, but it's 1 or 2 minutes. It's not
it's nothing in depth.
Not a 5-minute sit down interview.
It's not diving deep. We've rarely even gotten that in recent years at the Indy 500, in my opinion. But if they start routinely doing those, then I can see a half hour. But what the pre-race is now, you don't need more than 15, 20 minutes.
3 key stats for Portland, courtesy of Chad200 on Twitter. Joseph Newgarden, 4 top 5 finishes. This is going to blow you away. Max Chilton has led more laps than Joseph Newgarden at Portland.
Well, it would be safe to say that Joseph Newgarden will have a chance on cutting into that lead this weekend of Max Chilton.
Yes.
In laps led.
Will Power, 2 wins, a runner-up finish, started on the front row 3 times, 169 laps led, most among active drivers. He won this race, was it last year?
He did win it last year, yes.
And then Alex Palou, won from pole in his first start, finished first and second, last 2 years, 101 laps led. So with that said, once again, it's a track where I feel good about 2 drivers. Who you picking?
Do you want me to pick first?
Yes.
Alex Palou.
I agree. I'm going with Alex Palou.
Right.
I hope he can make
else?
it a perfect 10 this year.
We haven't talked about Penske in the last couple weeks, last couple races. They've become insignificant. Scott McLaughlin won this race 2 years ago. Will Power last year, or 3 years ago, excuse me, Scott McLaughlin. Is Penske going to win? Do you expect Penske to go the entire season without a win? Because we only have 3 races left.
I think they'll get one at one of the 2 ovals.
So not this weekend.
Not this week.
Okay. So we're both going with Alex Palou.
But, I mean, that is one of the big storylines. So you have the Rookie of the Year race, which is tight. You have Will Penske get a race win.
Leader circle.
I mean, those are the storylines down the stretch, but that I find interesting.
And that's why I would love to see Alex Palou clinch this championship
this weekend.
Because we can just pretend that it's even a race and maybe start analyzing some of the different storylines that you mentioned over the final 2 race weekends.
That's our preview for Portland. We'll recap it all coming up next week. If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can always find us on social media, IndyCar Podcast on Twitter/X, also on Instagram as well, on Facebook. Just search for New Track Record. You can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier and others for their support. And as always, download and listen on your favorite podcasting platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll dive in to the mailbag, and we go back to some comments from last week's episode. And first off, some updates on our random split era driver of the week from last week. And it's that Frederick Ekblom, this from Daguerre, was instrumental for Marcus Ericsson's career. He discovered Ericsson's talent, and Marcus competed at his karting track. And then, so that explains that aspect of it.
Well, we were wondering because they were from
the same hometown.
Hometown, yeah.
Kumla, Sweden. So it makes sense.
Sweden's not very big, nor, yes, there's plenty of race car drivers come to Sweden. It's not a hotbed of racing, so you think it'd be a pretty close-knit community in a smaller country if you were into racing. So, yeah, thank you for those updates. We've gotten updates but we had PJ Chesson details, and now we have Frederick Ekblom, and we'll see if anybody has any great stories about this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week, of which I'm already locked and loaded with that coming up.
And this will be what? IRL or kart?
This will be IRL, and I can't believe we've not done this person before.
Okay.
Strictly because of the name.
A great tease there.
Yes.
A couple of notes sent via Twitter by Mom2X over 2002, Courtney. I'm really excited to see what does happen promotion-wise for tracks for 2026. I hope it does force promoters and the tracks in general to up their game. I do have to wait till 2026, fingers crossed, to get to a race. Looking for tickets to Arlington GP, and then adds, does this mean that tracks are going to be forced to promote races more, especially if it's a track rental like Iowa? To be honest, it should. You've got more eyes on you promoting you to do a crap job. Then why should Fox promote your track or ask for your track for their NASCAR schedule? I mean, unfortunately, it's still up to IndyCar. Yeah,
I mean, I understand the argument, but if you're just renting the space, and effectively that's what it is, it's a rental. And so I compare, and I was thinking about it this week, my job, part of my job is renting out the space we have at our facility. It's an indoor turf football field and a basketball court. And particularly now we're having a lot of rentals booked for the winter months. And all we're involved in is the rental contract, providing the space, making sure it's clean, blah, blah, blah. Like, we have no association with what goes on the turf or on the basketball court or whatever. It's just a larger scale with these track rentals. You're just renting the space, and then you're in charge of everything. So I know we've been vocal too about, hey, could Iowa do a little bit more? But unless it's in the contract, and maybe you could make that argument that IndyCar needs to be a little bit more aggressive in asking these tracks to be helpful a little bit.
And literally, I think what people are most upset about is just the lack of social media.
Yeah, even just retweets or postings, correct. Like there's the low-hanging fruit.
And that can be in the contract. Like that. Correct. It's normal to have a social media aspect for promotion for a contract. Now, it may not be normal in racing, but I'm saying in other venues, that's pretty normal.
But you would think at the very least, because the track is still supplying employees, personnel, whether it's ushers, whether it's concessions, stuff like that. So there's more skin in the game, say, than what we have at my work when we rent the space out. But still, I think it's mostly IndyCar, and maybe they need to be a little bit more, hey, we're renting this, but you need to do a minimum of this, and help out IndyCar a little bit. But as you said, it's still the majority is IndyCar's responsibility to promote and hopefully get people in the seats.
More streaming news. Fox One streaming service launching August 21st, $19.99 per month. Obviously, IndyCar content will show up on there. The ultimate question is it practice sessions? Is it qualifying? Is it both? Is it even a race or two? Kind of like what we saw with Peacock. A lot of comments and replies on this, obviously. Sig Domer said they will move everything but the actual IndyCar race to the streaming. Got to recoup that investment. I'd like to think not, but I think they might be onto something. Lynn_IndyCar said, I think everything will stay status quo with FS1 and FS2 packages. No repeats since it will be on Fox One. Fox One will be the option for streaming folks. That's the best case scenario. Because they have the cable inventory, I don't think we'll see massive changes
Hopefully. Not in the near future. I could see further into this relationship with Fox that we've learned goes through 2030. That Fox is going to want to push some traffic to Fox 1. I don't necessarily think pushing lights to Fox 1 is going to bring some big investment of number of people that are getting Fox 1 purely for Indy Lights. In fact, I can guarantee you there won't be a lot of people. So I don't think we're going to see it next year, but maybe the year after we see some things. But it's all about that contract and the fine print. What does the contract say with IndyCar and Fox? Does it say everything for lights and IndyCar needs to be on an over-the-air station? Maybe. We're not privy to those details, so we can't really say.
Kojo617 says, would you pay that if you had console screen commercials, only side-by-side or none?
I wouldn't pay it.
I wouldn't either.
I don't hate commercials as much as other people do.
I'm not a F1 first guy, and so look, some of these F1 races I think would be nice to be broken up by ads.
Seriously, and there's a fair amount of IndyCar races that I'm like, oh, thank God there's a commercial.
Yes,
I can fast forward 4 or 5 of these.
I don't need them to stay on while they're cleaning up, a yellow or sweeping the track. Right? I mean, it's natural. And then TGL_studio said, posted the GIF, it's a pirate's life for me, Savvy.
Hey.
Don't condone it, but whatever works.
Yeah, if you can figure it out, not get caught, more power to you.
What IndyCar news drops first? You posted a poll. Mexico race announced. Nearly 39% of you said that. Full 2026 schedule, 34%. Nearly 26% said Powers, Penske, future. And only 1% said new car rendering. And some replies on this poll.
In hindsight, we should have put Honda announcement on there.
Ed Joris said other Honda plans for 27. That's the one we should have added. Rodenberger said, I feel like the Mexico round will be announced at or before Nashville. Scheduled release late September. Powers' position is probably coming in December. And the car rendering won't be till mid-26 or 27. Lynn_IndyCar said, Mexico City announced full schedule. September silly season starts with Power. And Hunter's Way 67. I don't think we'll find out about Power until the season is over, so Mexico gets my vote. I went with Mexico as well. There are some rumors popping up that this is not happening.
I mean, they're attached to Ricardo Escoto, whose dad is a major player in this Mexico race.
But apparently, Ricardo losing a seat was just like a funding deal, and it had nothing to do, should have nothing to do with Mexico City.
Yeah, per whatnot. The mailbag, yes.
Yeah, per Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com.
Yes. So he said that there was nothing, because the concern was, okay, Escoto's out of a seat in lights. Could this be either a byproduct of Mexico struggles or could then affect the Mexico deal? But it doesn't sound like that is the case.
An email from Josh, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com is how you send us an email. He writes, Christian Rasmussen seems to be wiping the floor with Rossi this year. I will admit that he has had some bad luck, such as the fire during the Indy 500 and his unfortunate run with a misaligned wall in Toronto. But even when he has somewhat normal luck, he still does not impress. Is Rossi washed? I'm not ready to go there yet because it's his first year with a new team.
I don't think I'd say he's washed, but I've been vocal in Alexander Rossi not being
a title contender.
Or even a consistent race contender. I think that's obvious based on his results. And there's not been any lack of opportunity for Alexander Rossi over the years to prove himself in IndyCar. This is not somebody where you're like, oh man, if he just had the opportunity, right? He raced for multiple years at Andretti. He raced for multiple years at McLaren. I think Alexander Rossi just is who he is, but it's also, yes, probably going to be his worst points finish of his career. But the fact that he was with Andretti and McLaren kind of puts an asterisk there as well. It's fair to say that he's at the weakest team that he's ever been on, despite the strides that Ed Carpenter Racing has and will continue to make. But yeah, I just think to me, it's not surprising because I know what Alexander Rossi is and isn't, and maybe other people are starting to realize that.
I think to me, he is still a guy you want for the Indy 500, right?
Yes.
He's still a good all-around driver. He's not competing for championships. And I also wonder, I mean, he has not been the same Rossi that we saw since the aeroscreen was implemented. For some of these drivers, I just wonder if and when we actually get a new car, will that be, a change? Like, look, this car is out of the aeroscreen. It's out of the hybrid. Some people have figured it out, namely Alex Palou. But beyond that, I just think this is a guy who, first year with a new team, so I'm giving him a pass. Year 2, obviously expecting more results. But the fact that Christian Rasmussen is the guy we're talking about consistently, he's 14th in points. Rossi's back to 18th in points. He hasn't had a top 10. You got to go back to Detroit. He's had a tough stretch. And I think we'll really feel like we have the final answer after next season between him and his teammate. Rasmussen's been very impressive.
He has been.
And it's not just on ovals anymore, because that was the case before.
Well, it's all about optics, too, because you look at Alexander Rossi, starts the season with 3 top 10s in his first 4 races. And then you mentioned his last top 10, which was at Detroit. But the last 5 races, 15th, 25th, 17th, 25th, and 15th. If you would swap that, if you would switch it around and say he struggled early and has come on late, like Christian Rasmussen, that really started with Indy and then the podium at Gateway and has continued, then maybe we're talking a little bit different about Alexander Rossi and saying, okay, he needed a couple, half a season to settle in. Now we're starting to see results. So to me, it's a roundabout way of saying, I don't think ECR should change their lineup. I think year 2 with Alexander Rossi will be beneficial, plus another full season of really the adjustments that they're making, the added investments, and they have to be really excited about what Christian Rasmussen has done. But I think you have to judge Alexander Rossi by the entire season, and he started off pretty solid before this current skid.
And we got a note from Ron in North Carolina. Dear Caleb and Justin, you guys do a great job with the podcast, even though you never pick race winners. Hey, we got Palou. I mean, how hard is that, right?
Well, this year it is not very hard.
Justin, your takes are getting better, and try to watch less F1 because F1 sucks. Keep
My
up
takes
the
are
great
getting
work.
better? Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
You're apparently
at least
improving.
for one person.
Yes. So
Well,
there you
appreciate
go.
it. Thanks for the letter. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, we're not the best in picking winners. I don't think we've ever tried to say we are. Look, I'm like 64th in our league.
And I think I'm behind you.
Yeah, and you're behind me. Like we're not up front. I'm actually higher in pit lane parlays F1 league than IndyCar. So by no means are we experts in terms of picking winners, but we look smarter this year because it's so easy to pick a winner. And that's why we both picked Alex Palou to win at Portland. Really going out on a limb here.
Yeah, we really are. That wraps up the mailbag. Time to get to news and notes as we wrap things up. We didn't get to it in our Portland preview, but as if we needed any more confirmation, but David Malukas with Gallagher is the primary sponsor for him in the number 4, not with the number 3 car and Scott McLaughlin, but with David Malukas. So that is basically a Penske light car as we suspected all along. Any other livery changes of note? It'll be Kyle Kirkwood in the JM Bullion car, which is going to be confusing because he looks like Colton Herta's car. Marcus Ericsson back in the Delaware Life car. Devlin DeFrancesco in the Dogecoin car. The Grateful Dead car lives again with Felix Rosenquist. Hopefully a better result this time. Root Insurance with Marcus Armstrong. AMPM with Connor Daly. And I think the changes for Penske, you'll have Kevin Simpson in the Ridgeline car. And then with Penske, it'll be Odyssey battery for Scott McLaughlin and Astemo. Is it Astemo? I never know how to pronounce it.
I think it's a Stemo.
With Joseph Newgarden. So livery changes for this weekend of note.
Yeah, people were kind of making a bit of a deal of Malukas's livery, but I mean, it's a Penske car.
Yeah, Clarence Technologies is a Penske sponsor as well, and that's been on the car since the Indy 500.
Non-story.
I don't think that's a surprise. We kind of know this is how it's going to work.
I mean, and I'm really hoping Portland is a success. It's very much the redheaded stepchild on the schedule. I mean, the drivers have been vocal about not liking Portland for whatever reason. I think the series in the paddock was buoyed by the amount of people that were at Laguna Seca. And if we can have a similar turnout at Portland, I think some drivers will, start feeling more positive about going to Portland. I feel like when we look at adding more events on the schedule, quote unquote, events like Portland could go away in the future because of the lack of interest. And remember, before Portland, we got to get back in the Pacific Northwest, right? Portland was on the schedule for 25 years before it went away. And so you really hope that this year, this weekend, we sees an uptick in attendance and bring some excitement to that event, like Laguna Seca a couple weeks ago.
Yes. Other driver news in the series formerly known as Indy Lights, Michael D'Orlando, former USF 2000 champion, back with Andretti Cape with the team for the final 3 races of the season. I wish him luck, a guy getting another opportunity. Hopefully he can succeed with that. A lot of notes from this week's Racer.com mailbag, and I have to pull out my handy guide.
I broke it down. The last couple weeks you've beaten me to the mailbag. But this week I was able to get first and put a nice handy-dandy recap together for you, all numbered and everything.
Yes, it was very professional.
All
via text. That's the funny part.
Yeah, because texting, important documents, that's me.
So here we go. So I think we were kind of curious, and we haven't kept up with Marshall Pruitt's podcast, but a June cancer screening had some unwelcome surprises. And so Marshall Pruitt missed most of the July races. So there's the update there. Obviously, best wishes to him and his wife on that journey. If Milwaukee and Nashville don't have bigger crowds, Marshall Pruitt will be concerned. It looks like ticket sales for Milwaukee have been solid. Nashville, not so much. So
I
we'll see.
Looked at Nashville. I was scouting the Milwaukee track map yesterday, and I got excited at first because 3/4 of it was in red. And I was like, oh my gosh, 3/4 of it are sold already, but that's reserved seating as opposed to GA seating.
Confusing.
Now, I started clicking around and, some sections were pretty full, other sections 3/4 open. So, it's so much, it's different. The tracks that just have the map and it's heated based on availability in that section are the best to judge seats sold, but rarely do the tracks accommodate and have it look there so easy. So I think what Marshall Pruitt was saying is it was an encouraging year one for Milwaukee. It was an encouraging year one for Nashville, especially with how little we expected last year. But you would hope to see that growth from year one to year two, as opposed to year one being the apex of the crowd size at both of those. So here's hoping that the final 3 races all have an uptick in attendance.
Let's hope, because Portland has seemingly been a struggle for a few years, but it seems like it's okay to return on the schedule. Other notes that you sent me, Marshall Pruitt hopes Fox will help push the schedule deeper into the season with non-traditional race times. That's an interesting thing. We talked with Adam sort of about that.
What does that look like, though? Because people throwing out weekday races, okay.
The only way to do that is during the summer, after the MLB All-Star break, where
correct. But
Fox can promote it during the MLB All-Star game, and then you race, the Thursday night? I mean, Kevin Lee's had this idea for years.
Yeah, I just don't know. That would be the obvious one, right? That week. You look at even the week leading into the All-Star break, I think IndyCar should have a night race on the Sunday going into the All-Star break because there's no Sunday night baseball. There's nothing going on. And so I think that would be a natural slot for a night oval race. But then we're talking and Marshall and Adam Stern both talked about, non-traditional times and dates deeper into the fall. And I don't know how that's going to work, because take the NFL schedule, for example. They alternate doubleheader weeks, right? CBS and Fox. So it's easy to say, well, IndyCar could race after the 1 o'clock game on weeks that the NFL doesn't have a 4 o'clock. The problem with that is there's still Fox games at 4 o'clock for the NFL. They're just West Coast games. So take San Francisco, for example. San Francisco has a home game on a weekend, on a Sunday where Fox doesn't have the doubleheader. Then San Francisco doesn't get a 1 o'clock game. They just get the 4 o'clock San Francisco 49ers game. So there's always 2 games. So conceivably you could have IndyCar race at 5 o'clock somewhere on Fox on a NFL Sunday without the doubleheader, but certain markets aren't going to have the game, right? Similar to what we're having this week, where certain affiliates are carrying preseason NFL games.
Chicago, New Orleans,
right,
are for example,
instead of IndyCar, of which I don't blame the affiliates one iota. But then you're talking about, what about Saturday? Well, you have college football, and Fox has primetime games.
All 3 windows.
Right. All 3 windows they have games. So that's not going to work on Big Fox. And then you're talking about Friday night, but Fox has Big Ten games on Friday night. So all of a sudden you're looking at the weekend and going, okay, where are you putting races?
Do you put a race 7 p.m. Eastern time slot on Sunday, or say 7:30 whenever Fox wraps up its NFL coverage, and have it follow right after? I get that's not ideal, because then you're going head-to-head with Sunday Night Football.
I mean,
halfway through the race.
Yeah, not only are you going up against Sunday Night Football, you're going up against the most watched program on television for the entire year.
I'm just saying that is the only example that's open on the weekend.
Right. So in a way, the Fox deal hampers the ability to race deep into the fall, because there's football Friday, Saturday, Sunday on Fox. So then you're throwing out Thursday night races. I just don't know.
Thursday Night Thunder.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Look, do I want to see more races deep into the fall? I'd much rather start earlier. I'd much rather go February to early September.
And maybe that's how they make it work.
Or
you do your international schedule.
Yeah.
The 3-race international schedule that's been rumored for a decade.
I mean, could you see a Super Bowl Sunday afternoon race?
Yes.
That starts at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
Somewhere. Even if Fox doesn't have the broadcast rights for the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Is do a Super Bowl Sunday date. I think that would be perfect.
I do too. I'm not watching 4 hours of pregame coverage for the Super Bowl.
I don't watch any I know you don't watch pre-race. I turn the Super Bowl on at kickoff.
Yeah, I want to see right before, the anthem and
I get that.
All that, but that's about it.
But I think a Super Bowl Sunday afternoon race would be perfect for IndyCar.
I agree. Other notes from the mailbag, there's a lot this week. The family that owns Walmart, a.k.a. the Waltons, is involved with the Denver race, which is rumored to be around Broncos Stadium, because they also own the Denver Broncos.
Uh-huh.
So that explains that.
That'd be good.
NASCAR yanking races from Fox likely had an impact on going so bullish on IndyCar. So IndyCar benefited by NASCAR's mistake. An unnamed team owner has a follow-up meeting with Lundqvist regarding a 2026 ride. We went back and forth on this.
We did. I mean, it's easy to say Coyne or Juncos. Both of us said Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan.
Yes. I thought maybe off the wall a Shank, but I feel like Shank is happy with their lineup. But they did really like when Lundqvist was with their team a couple years ago for a few races. But yeah, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, mouthful, is the team I think that makes most sense here.
And I think they've been happy with Louis Foster as a rookie. Rahal obviously is going to call his shot when he wants to be done. Just kind of look at that 30 car of Devlin DiFrancesco as
out of the leader circle.
Yep. Yeah.
Penske Entertainment said it formed a marketing committee last year, and Zach Brown was appointed to that community. Then Zach was asked about it and said nobody had mentioned that to him. So
those are the
game of telephone here.
The classic IndyCar things that used to be more recurring before Penske bought the series and IMS, I'll admit. But this is still kind of silly. Like,
yes.
What are we doing here?
Renderings of the new car were well received by teams. And we already talked about Ricardo Escoto out in the Mexico race. No connection. It was just a money thing. And then look for more street races when it comes to adding events, not permanent tracks that draw crickets.
And that's what we've talked about with Adam Stern and even last week is people clamoring for here's what's not going to happen with this Fox investment is Fox putting up money to rent ovals.
Yes.
That's not the play here. So for people saying, hey, IndyCar should go rent Homestead and go rent Phoenix and go rent Michigan and go rent Pocono and go rent Richmond, that's not good money being invested.
That would come down the road if the initial run of, Denver and Mexico City and, I don't know, where else do you add a street race? Seattle. I'm just throwing out markets.
Seattle be nice instead of Portland,
somewhere on the East Coast, wherever that would be. I have no clue. That's the play. Look, Arlington,
Louisville?
I guess, is the one. Arlington's the one, obviously, first up. But yes,
right. But it's you don't make money by renting out tracks. I think if IndyCar opened their books and said, "Hey, here, look, here's how far we're in the red when we rent venues," it's got to make sense. Dollars and cents, right? It's got to make sense. Would it be great if IndyCar was racing at Michigan? Absolutely. Should IndyCar rent out Michigan Speedway to put on a race? Absolutely not. So if you can raise the profile of IndyCar by having these festivals, these events, more people start watching, more people get invested, advertising revenue goes up, then all of a sudden, Michigan could be like, hey, we could make money hosting IndyCar. Or Richmond saying, hey, we could make money hosting IndyCar. That's the hope down the line. The answer is that, not renting tracks and losing money.
Other quick notes before we get to tweets of the week and our random split era driver of the week. First off, Iowa, which did not draw for IndyCar. They only had the grandstands for sale for NASCAR, which is about 24,000 fans. No temporary suites. And
Which
the
I
racing was not ideal from the reaction I saw.
I didn't watch a second, but I
didn't either.
I presumed Hy-Vee would have their suite thing there, right? But they didn't.
Nope. Not there.
Also, the fact that the ARCA pole speed was almost a full second faster than the Cup speed.
Concerning.
I actually had to look. I've heard of ARCA, but I was like, where does it fall in the hierarchy of stock cars? Like
That's like a step below trucks.
Yeah, it's like the single A. It's pretty much like what would you say, USF 2000?
Yeah, I would say
or Indy Pro.
Yeah, I guess single A. That's fair because trucks is double A and triple A is expensive.
Yeah, so that's like USF 2000's pole speed being faster than Indy cars.
And ARCA has like regional series and then the national series, right?
Correct.
Because there's like a West series and East series and then the national.
Yeah, I think that's how it works. But, yeah, that being the case was hysterical.
Not
Absolutely
good.
Hysterical.
IndyCar got some love during the Speedway Classic on Fox last weekend, obviously at Bristol Motor Speedway. They even, I believe, showed A-Rod's IndyCar two-seater ride segment. So good promotion there.
They had a lot of time to fill.
Yes, they did with the rain delay. Astor Cup has a hashtag. So if you do hashtag Astor Cup, the trophy will show up after.
Yeah, that's fancy.
Hickey93 found that one for us. They did the unveiling of the Nashville trophy, which is a Gibson guitar.
Nice.
Colton heard a part of the reveal. Of course, he won the race last year, so that unveiled. Pretty cool deal that they do every year for that race. Elsewhere, we have Alex Palou. His Indy 500 merch is out, alexpalou.com on his site. And then an opportunity, if you're in the Indianapolis area, or Indiana for that matter, August 12th, IMS Day at the Dairy Bar or Dairy Barn, depending on which way you put it. It is a barn, so I say it's the Dairy Barn.
Yes.
But it's the Dairy Bar at the Dairy Barn?
Yes.
Is that which way do you go with it?
I would say I do say the Dairy Bar in the dairy barn.
Yes.
That's what I say.
I think last time I was at the State Fair a couple years ago, there was like the sign said one thing and then somewhere else it said another. So I love this debate back and forth of which it is. Anyway, August 12th, they will have Doug Bowles, IMS IndyCar president, as a celebrity server from 11 a.m. to noon Eastern. And then Indy 500 pole sitter and Rookie of the Year Robert Schwartzman from noon to 1. And they will also have milk served in limited edition winner's drink milk bottles, which that's pretty cool.
Hey.
Dairy bar / barn open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Again, every day throughout the Indiana State Fair, which is going on right now. Probably going to go to the fair next weekend, so I will miss it by a couple of days. Darn. Anything that we missed?
Well, I would say Pato Award, throwing out the first pitch at the Rangers game, kind of promoting the Arlington GP. The ball was a bit high, but good throw. Isn't the worst we've seen out of an IndyCar driver in a first pitch. So good job to Pato for doing that. And
Marshall Pruitt posted a story about Meyershank Racing on their music tie-in approach. Obviously, the Grateful Dead livery getting a lot of love and a lot of interest. They've had drivers at the track, obviously, for these SiriusXM deals, but this promotion with Ozzy Osbourne and Grateful Dead, I feel like it's gone off to a new level this season.
Yeah, and hopefully he can last a little bit longer than half a lap or a third of a lap like he did Toronto with the Grateful Dead.
Shank and the partners said they've seen huge spikes in social media traffic, fans with bands interacting with IndyCar. That's a part I guess I never think about. It's like fans of these bands are going to be, oh, that's cool. And you're introducing people to IndyCar that way.
Yeah, it's that impressions metric, right? That is so important for businesses and corporations and stuff on social media. So
over 3 million interactions with the Ozzy content.
That's good stuff.
That's pretty good in terms of impressions. So they're looking for new ways to kind of build on this. But obviously a good success story for a team and a brand working together. All right. Another AI-free edition of New Track Record Podcast. Time for Tweets of the Week.
We are not touching that, folks. We are not touching it with a 10-foot pole.
Nick Yeoman said, how are things tonight on IndyCar twit ... never mind. And I guess that's as far as I want to go on that topic.
Well, like we posted earlier this week, we're just here for the comments, but then I even got sick of the comments. So we're staying away from such things.
That is the tweet.
Yeah,
that's all we're going to go into. Look, of course it's the one time they get an actual IndyCar correct, right? And not an F1 or F2 car.
But technically it's inaccurate because it's not in speedway trim.
Yes, it was in road course configuration.
Correct. But yes.
And if you don't know what we're talking about,
keep it that way.
Yeah.
Don't even look it up.
Don't bother.
Don't bother.
You probably know.
Mm-hmm. But if you don't, consider yourself blessed.
Yes. All right. Let's get to our random split air driver of the week.
Have you heard of Slick Racing Gardner?
Yes. We've never done Racing Gardner?
We've never done
no way.
Racing Gardner.
No way.
I had no idea who Slick Racing Gardner was. And I actually had time at work this morning. I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to start. I was going to start making a list. But then once I stumbled upon Slick Racing Gardner, I was like, this guy's just going to be the random split air driver of the week.
Random split air driver of the century.
Oh, definitely. So if you're not familiar with Slick Racing Gardner, he was born in Buellton, California. And his claim to fame, at least on the racetrack, was the 1996 Indianapolis 500, where he raced for Team Simon / Team Scandia. Now
one of what, 7 cars?
Yeah, I think so. Was it 7? Was Scandia 96?
I'm going to look this up.
All right. So while you do that, I will break down Slick Racing Gardner. By the way, that's not a nickname, people. His real name is Slick Racing Gardner.
No way. I thought it was a nickname.
No, that's his real name. I even did added research to make sure that was his real name. He tested, now this is kind of cool. In 1988, he tested the Green Monster land speed car at Bonneville, the Salt Flats. You can see a portion of this car at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. The engine portion.
That's cool.
He tested this.
I've probably seen it because I've been there.
Yeah, great museum. It's free if you looking for a weekend. It's a huge museum and it's free. He tested that for 4 years, becoming the youngest driver ever to top 500 mile an hour at the age of 16 in 1988. He drove off-road vehicles in the High Desert Racing Association for a couple years and was the Rookie of the Year in the American IndyCar Series in 1993. Not to be confused with the IndyCar Series. The American IndyCar Series in 1993. I think Bill Tempero wrote.
Yes.
It was basically old chassis. Is that what it was?
I think so. We've
talked
discussed
about
this in the past.
Maybe we should do random split era American IndyCar Series drivers of the week. But yeah, he was the Rookie of the Year in that series in 1993. After a second year in the series, he tested for Project Indy, which was competing in IndyCar. He intended to debut in the IRL in 1996 at Phoenix, despite failing to pass his rookie test in the Test at the West because of an engine failure. He was still entered in that race, the Phoenix race, last minute with Tempero Giuffre Racing, but further mechanical issues in practice left him unable to compete. He qualified 25th at the 1996 Indianapolis 500 on the second day of qualifying. He was out after 76 laps due to a suspension failure, ended up being credited, finishing 25th, starting 25th. This may be the most interesting thing about Slick Racing Gardner, and I can't find any details. After retiring from racing, he became a stunt driver for television and movies.
That's pretty cool.
But I couldn't find, like, IMDb. I can't find any credits for Slick Racing Gardner. I think IMDb actually thought, like, would you type an actual real name into this for search? I'm like, this guy is a real name. But yes, Slick Racing Gardner. Shocking that he has not yet been on the Random Split Era Driver of the Week, because he is on the pantheon of Random Split Era drivers.
And the fact that's his real name, I always assumed it was a nickname. Can you imagine if he grew up to be anything but a race car driver?
Right? I mean, there's no details on his family, and it's like, was his dad a racer or something? I imagine there's a background there because he was racing, or at least testing cars at the Bonneville Salt Flats, right? I mean, there's got to be some history there, but all we have is what we can go on Wikipedia. Mr. Slick Racing Gardner, yes, that's his real name, this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week.
And I mentioned Team Scandia had 7 cars in the Indy 500. Yes, that is correct. Eliseo Salazar and Alessandro Sampedri both finished top 10. Salazar 6th, Sampedri 4th. Fermin Velez was 21st. Michel Jourdain Jr. was 13th. Michel Alboreto was 30th. Joe Gosek, another Random Split Era Driver of the Week, was 22nd.
Oh, all these guys basically are on the Split Era of the Week.
And Racing Gardner was 25th. And then Lynn St. James actually did a couple of races prior. She did Walt Disney World in Phoenix before Racing Gardner took over the 90 car for the Indy 500 that year.
The next year, they downsized to just 5 cars at the Indianapolis 500. But Scandia, is it a record 7?
I think so.
Seven drivers competing in the Indianapolis 500, 1996.
All right. Well, thanks to Adam Stern for joining us. For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. We'll be back next week to recap the BitNile.com Grand Prix of Portland. This has been another edition of New Track Record Podcast.